A small mining colony at the edge of human space. Wind moving smoke across cracked stone. The sky above it, the color of fire. Closer now. A perimeter fence. Defense turrets firing into the dark. Drop pods burning where they fell. Closer. A maintenance hatch on a western ridge. A man's hands on a rifle. Knuckles wrapped in tape. A worn photograph in his pocket. He has been 32 for 6 weeks. He has decided he will not be 33. 200 civilians underground. One soldier above. 73 warships overhead. In a throne room of dark metal and starlight, an Empress who has not wept in 300 years leans forward in her chair. She watches the man. She does not blink. Something inside her, frozen for 3 centuries, begins to crack. A child in a deep tunnel turns over in her sleep. Her hand finds a yellow ribbon. She breathes once. Above her, the sky is burning, and the man is walking into it. Part 1. A bloody hand reaches up, trembling, caked in dirt and grease and something darker. An alien queen's hand meets it, 8 feet tall, skin like polished violet stone. Slow, deliberate. She does not pull away. Their fingers touch. The crowd watches, thousands of soldiers, none of them breathing. A voice, female, old, warm as a kitchen at midnight. Sometimes the universe sends one person, not to win the war, just to remind everyone else what matters. Cut to black. Cut to a small red light, blinking in alarm. A small office on a small colony at the edge of human space. A man at the window, hands on the glass, watching the sky burn. His name is Tate Brannigan. In 5 hours, he will be the only thing standing between 200 civilians and an army. In 5 hours, the most powerful woman in 400 star systems will look at him, and something inside her, frozen for 3 centuries, will begin to crack. The alarm had been screaming for 40 seconds before Tate moved. He did not run. He did not call out. He just turned from the window, walked to his desk, sat down, looked at the sensor feed. 73 ships, Drathari signatures, Imperial class. He read the number twice, because the number could not be right, except the number was right. Tate Brannigan was 32 years old. He had been 32 for exactly 6 weeks. His mother had been 32 when she died. His father had been 32 when he left. He had decided some time ago that he would not be 33. He had not made a plan to die. Some men make plans. Tate had simply made an agreement with himself. The agreement was quiet. The agreement was that when something came for him, he would not run. Something had come for him. 73 somethings. He reached into his jacket pocket. The photograph was soft at the edges now. The corners had begun to fray, the way old paper does when a man takes it out 1,000 times. 1,000 more. A woman smiled at him from the photograph. Brown hair, a laugh in her eyes. Her name had been Linnea. She had taught 7th grade. She had hated cilantro. She had loved him for reasons he had never fully understood. A little girl sat in her lap, 3 years old in the photograph. Brown hair too. Her name had been Avery. Avery would have been 7 now, if she were still anywhere. She was not anywhere. Tate touched the photograph, once with one finger, the way a man touches a window that separates him from a world he can no longer enter. Then he put it back. Then he picked up the comm. He did not call for help. There was no help to call for. Help was 3 weeks away. He called for Reva. She arrived in 2 minutes, out of breath. She was 56 years old, and she had never in her life run anywhere. She was running now. How bad, she said. It was not a question. It was the only thing left to ask. 73, Tate said. Reva Solen stood very still. She had hired Tate 2 years ago. She had seen his file. She had seen the part of his file that everyone else missed. The part where a Marine Force recon medic decorated for valor had walked into his commanding officer's tent and refused an order. She had read what the order was. She had not asked him about it. She had simply given him a security job at the edge of human space. And once a week on Sunday evenings, she had invited him for dinner, and she had not asked him anything then either. She had known he was a man who needed to be left alone. She had not known how to leave him alone without disappearing entirely. So she had stayed close, the way mothers stay close. She was not his mother. His mother had been dead for 19 years, but she was close enough. Drathari, she said. Drathari. They don't talk. They don't talk. How long? He looked at the sensors. 18 minutes before drop pods. Maybe less. The door slid open. Soren Halpern stumbled through. 24 years old. Engineering technician. His hands shook the way a young man's hands shake when he understands for the first time that the world is much larger than him and not at all kind. Riva, he said. Riva, I tried the relay. There's no signal getting out. They're jamming everything. Of course they are, Tate said. What do we do? Riva did not answer Soren. She looked at Tate. Tate looked at Riva. There is a thing that happens between two people who have understood each other for 2 years without ever once speaking about it. A thing that does not need words. The thing happened now. The tunnels, Tate said. The mining tunnels, Riva said. They go deep. The Drathari surveys don't show them. The colony's been here longer than the imperial cartography. The tunnels are off the map. 200 people. Get everyone underground. Inez, Soren, the whole shift, the night crew, the kids. And you. He did not answer. Tate. Still he did not answer. Riva closed her eyes, opened them. You are not staying up here. Someone has to. You are not. Riva. You are not staying. His voice was very quiet. There has to be noise. Up here, the defense turrets, the lights, the signals. The Drathari have to think someone is fighting. Otherwise, they sweep. They find the tunnels in an hour. 200 people. Children. Soren's mother. The Halpern girl. All of them. Tate. It buys you time until the rescue ship comes. There is no rescue ship coming, Tate. Then it buys them a long time to be alive, before they aren't. Riva looked at him for a very long moment, and in that moment she understood something she had suspected for 2 years and never asked. That this man, the man she had hired, the man she had fed soup to on Sunday evenings, had been waiting for an excuse, not to die. Men who want to die find 100 easier ways. He had been waiting for an excuse to spend himself, for something, for someone. She had given him soup. He had been waiting for fire. Tate Brannigan, she said, you make it count. I will. I mean it. You make it count. I will. She put her hand on his shoulder, the way mothers do, and then she walked out of the room because if she stayed any longer, she would not be able to walk out at all. Soren stood in the doorway. He looked like he might cry. Mr. Brannigan, Soren, you're going to die. Probably. The boy could not finish the sentence. Tate stood up from the desk, crossed the room, put a hand on the back of Soren's neck. Briefly, firmly, the way a brother might. Get them to the tunnels, all of them. You're smart. You know the patches, you know the cameras. Keep them quiet. Keep them deep. Don't come up. No matter what you hear, you don't come up. What if? You don't come up. What if I hear you? Tate did not answer. He walked past Soren and into the corridor and toward the armory. He stopped one time on the way, at a doorway that led to the lower deck, where the families lived, where Dr. Inez Vargas had set up a makeshift nursery 3 weeks ago for an orphan child who had arrived from the Eris Voyager refugee program, a child whose foster parents had died in a mine collapse 4 weeks back. A child Tate had heard about in passing, the way one hears about a tragedy that belongs to someone else. He had never gone down to that deck. He had been very careful not to. He did not go now. He just stood at the doorway for the count of 3. Then he went to the armory. The civilians moved fast. Reva had drilled them every quarter for 2 years. They had complained every time. The drills were boring. The tunnels were cold. Soren's grandmother had called them a waste of a Tuesday morning. Soren's grandmother now moved through the corridor without speaking, a small bag slung over her shoulder. Her arthritic knees forgotten. She walked the way old women walk when they have decided they are not going to die today. Inez Vargas walked at the back of the line. Dr. Inez Vargas, 44 years old, born on Mars, trained in trauma surgery on the colonial circuit, eyes like a hawk that has seen too much winter. In her arms, a small girl, 7 years old, light brown hair tied with a yellow ribbon Inez had given her 3 days ago. Her name was Marigold. Everyone called her Goldie. Goldie was not crying. Goldie did not cry. Inez had noticed this about her the day she arrived. A child who has been through what Goldie had been through learns very young that crying does not help. Crying does not bring back the people who are gone. Crying just makes adults nervous. So Goldie did not cry. She held Inez's neck very tightly. She watched. She watched everything. At the door to the deep tunnels, Reva was counting heads. 186. 187. Soren came up beside her. He looked at the count. We're missing 13. They're coming. How do you know? Because I know. She did know. The last 13 were the night shift miners. They were always last. Today would not be different. Tate appeared at the corridor end. He had changed. He wore tactical black, 2 rifles across his back, a combat vest weighed down with power cells and grenades, and a knife older than Soren's grandmother. His left sleeve was rolled up because he had a small tattoo on his forearm that he did not like to hide. The tattoo was a Latin word. No light. Do not. Do not, what he had never told anyone. He walked past the line of civilians. Some of them looked at him. Most did not. Most could not. Reva looked at him. Tate looked at Reva. She nodded. He nodded. He kept walking. He had 11 minutes before the first drop pods. He had to be at the perimeter in 7. He did not look at Inez. He did not look at the child in Inez's arms. He passed them. And then the child said it. It was not loud. It was not even a sentence. It was just 3 words. The way a small girl says them when something happens inside her chest that she does not understand and cannot stop. You look. He stopped. He did not turn. Goldie tried again. You look like. Inez felt the child's whole body tighten in her arms. She felt the small hands tighten around her neck. She felt the breath catch in the small chest pressed against her shoulder. You look like my dad, Goldie said. Tate did not move. The corridor did not move. Reva did not move. Soren had stopped counting. Inez looked down at the child. Then up at the back of Tate Brannigan, the man she had worked beside for 6 months, the man she had treated for a sprained wrist and a cracked rib and never once a story. She looked at Reva. Reva had her hand over her mouth. Tate turned. He turned very slowly. The way a man turns when something behind him has reached forward across years and touched him on the back of the neck. He looked at the child. He had not looked at her in 3 weeks. He had been very careful not to, because he had heard about her. He had heard that her foster parents had died, and he had heard that she had brown hair, and he had heard that she was 7 years old. And he had decided the way he decided most things now that he would not look at her, because there are some things a man cannot afford to look at. Because looking is a door. He looked. She had brown hair. She had a yellow ribbon. She had eyes that knew too much. She did not look like Avery. Avery had not looked like anyone. Avery had looked like herself. Avery had a small scar above her left eyebrow from a coffee table corner. Avery had a laugh that started in her stomach. Avery had been 3 years old. Avery had been 3 years old forever. Goldie did not look like Avery. Goldie looked like a child. Just a child, which was worse, which was so much worse. Tate Brannigan, who had not cried since the day 3 years ago that he had received the message about the Eris Voyager, did not cry now. He had taught his body that crying was a thing that happened to other people. He walked back, 3 steps. He knelt so that he was level with her face. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she said. "What's your name, Marigold?" "That's a flower." "I know. It's a good name." "Thank you." His voice was very even. The way a man's voice is even when the rest of him is trying to come apart at the seams and the voice is the only thing holding him together. "Marigold, I have to go do something. Outside for a little while. And the doctor here, Dr. Inez, she's going to take you somewhere safe. With a lot of other people. Like a big sleepover. You're going to be brave. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Good." He reached out, slowly. He touched the yellow ribbon in her hair. Just the ribbon. Not her. Not the hair. Just the ribbon. The way a man touches a thing he is not allowed to touch. "I like your ribbon. My mom gave it to me. It's pretty." "Thank you." He stood up. He looked at Inez. He did not say anything. Inez nodded. He turned and walked away, and he did not stop walking, and he did not look back, because if he looked back, he was not going to be able to do what came next. Behind him, Riva crossed the corridor in 3 steps and put her hand on Inez's shoulder. Just for a moment. Just long enough for Inez to feel the weight of what had happened. "He lost a child," Riva said, very softly. "Same age as her." Inez closed her eyes. Goldie watched the back of the man walk away down the corridor. She did not understand what had happened, but she understood that something had happened. Something to him. Something inside him. She tightened her grip on Inez's neck. "Dr. Inez," she said. "Yes, baby." "Is he going to come back?" Inez did not answer, because there is no answer to that question that does not break a child's heart. And Inez had been a doctor long enough to know that the kind ones are the ones that lie. "Yes," she said. "He's coming back." Outside, the sky was the color of fire. Tate moved through the colony with the practiced quiet of a man who had memorized the geometry of every corridor and shadow. He had not always been quiet. There had been a time in his early 20s when he had been loud. Loud in bars, loud at parades, loud when Linnea laughed, and he wanted everyone to know that the laugh belonged to him. He had been a young Marine, and he had been very loud because he had been very alive. The Eris Voyager had taken his loudness. It had taken his loudness slowly. Not all at once. The first months he had screamed, the next months he had drunk, the next months he had stopped speaking entirely for almost a year. And when his voice had come back, it had come back smaller. Now he was quiet. Now he was as quiet as a man can be without being a ghost. He moved through the maintenance corridor that led to the perimeter access. He triggered the defense turrets as he went. 6 of them. The automated kind, the kind that had been mothballed 2 budget cycles ago because the Republic did not consider Meridian 9 worth the upkeep. He had spent a year off hours rebuilding them. Riva had asked him why. He had said vaguely that he needed something to do with his hands. The defense turrets came online. Their targeting matrices warmed up. They began to track. The first drop pod hit the eastern slope at the count of 14. It was not subtle. Drathuri drop pods are not made for subtlety. They are made for terror. They are armored cones that come in at speed and crash and split open and release 9 soldiers in 70 seconds. The turrets opened fire. The first 9 Drathuri did not make it past the second turret. The second pod hit. Then the third. The Drathuri are not stupid. They learn fast. By the 4th pod, they were dropping smoke. By the 5th, they were targeting the turrets directly. By the 6th, 2 of the turrets were gone. Tate watched from a maintenance hatch on the western ridge. He watched the way a man watches a chessboard he has been playing alone for a long time. He counted positions, he counted cover, he counted blind spots in the surveillance net. He had made his choices already. He was just waiting for the choices to arrive. The first patrol came through the corridor below him at the count of 11 minutes. 3 Drathari, 7 feet tall, 4 arms each. Their armor was the color of cold tar, and their helmets had no visors, just slit-shaped sensor banks that glowed a low pink. Tate dropped from the hatch. The first Drathari died from 2 rounds through the helmet seam, the seam where the chin guard met the throat collar. He had learned that seam by watching 3 hours of training footage at a Republic outpost when he was 26. The footage had been classified. He had not been authorized. He had watched it anyway. The second Drathari turned fast, very fast, 4 arms swinging. Tate was already moving. Inside the guard, under the lower right arm. The knife came up through the armpit seam and into the lung. The Drathari made a sound like a kettle, then no sound. The third Drathari got off 2 shots before Tate killed it. Both shots missed. The first one missed because Tate had calculated where the Drathari would aim under stress, and the Drathari had aimed exactly there. The second one missed because the Drathari was already falling. Tate stood in the corridor and breathed. He breathed for 4 seconds. Then he moved. He took weapons. He took power cells. He took the lower right gauntlet from the second Drathari because the gauntlet had a tactical net link, and Tate intended to use it. He moved. The smell came first, engine oil, then hot metal, then the burnt coffee smell that Drathari armor makes when it ruptures. By the count of 20 minutes, Tate had killed 19 Drathari. By the count of 30, the number was 41. He was bleeding by then. The plasma had clipped his left arm just above the elbow. It was not a deep burn, it was just deep enough that the muscle was visible. The kind of wound that in a clean hospital would have been a 6-hour conversation. In a corridor on a dying colony, it was a problem to solve in 40 seconds. He pulled himself into a maintenance closet, locked the door. His hands were steady. They had no business being steady, but they were. He pulled a piece of metal pipe out of his vest. He had taken it earlier from a broken steam vent. He had taken it because experience had taught him that a man in his situation would need it. He heated the end with his lighter. The pipe glowed orange. He looked at his arm. He bit down on his other forearm, hard, right above the no-light tattoo. He pressed the pipe against the wound. There is no description of this kind of pain that does it justice. The brain reacts the way the brain reacts to electrocution. It whites out. The body becomes a single screaming organism. Tate did not scream. He bit through skin instead. He tasted blood, his own. When it was done, he sat against the wall and shook. He shook for 9 seconds. Then he stopped shaking. He looked at his arm. The wound was sealed. Ugly, but sealed. He pulled the photograph out of his pocket. Linnea looked at him. He did not say anything to her. He did not need to. She had always known what he was thinking. He put the photograph back. He picked up the rifle. He went back out into the corridor. Deep in the tunnels, Soren had done what Soren did best. He had patched into the colony's external surveillance grid. He had pulled the feed from Tate's helmet camera. He had cleaned the signal, and he had put the feed up on the main wall of the deep bunker where 200 civilians were trying to remember how to breathe. He had not asked permission to do this. Reva did not stop him. The grandmothers watched. The miners watched. The children watched. Soren's mother watched with her hand pressed against her mouth. Inez sat against the far wall with Marigold in her lap. The little girl watched too. Her small head was tilted up. Her brown eyes were fixed on the screen. On the screen, a man none of them had really known was killing aliens. He moved through the smoke the way smoke itself moves. He did not seem to walk so much as appear in places. One moment in a doorway, next moment on the other side of a corridor. Drathari soldiers fired into spaces where he had been a half-second before. The civilians had thought vaguely that Tate Brannigan was a security officer. They had thought of him when they thought of him at all as the polite man who fixed the door codes and did not say much at the Sunday dinners. They had not known. Inez had not known. Soren had not known. Riva had known. Riva had known the whole time. He should be on the ground, Inez said quietly. I saw the burn. That was a plasma graze. He should be unconscious from the shock. He isn't, Riva said. Why isn't he? Riva did not answer. Because the answer was not a thing you could say out loud in a room with 200 frightened people. The answer was that a man who has already decided he is dead does not feel pain the way a man who hopes to live feels pain. The answer was that Tate Brannigan had been waiting 3 years for permission, and permission had finally arrived. Marigold spoke without looking away from the screen. Dr. Inez. Yes, baby. He's the man. Yes, baby. He's the man who's not going to come back. Inez closed her eyes. She held the child very tightly. On the screen, Tate Brannigan crossed a courtyard alone, and the 17 Drathari who had been waiting for him there began the worst minute of their lives. Far above the burning colony in a chamber of dark metal and starlight, the Empress of the Drathari Imperium sat on her throne and tried to remember the last time she had felt anything. Her name was Lara Seltha. She was 371 years old. She had ruled the Imperium for 296 of those years. She was sitting very still. Her 4 hands were folded in her lap. Her skin was the color of polished obsidian shot through with veins of violet. Her eyes were amber gold with flecks of pale violet at the iris. She did not blink often. When she did, it was slow, deliberate, the way old trees move in a low wind. Her hair was platinum, almost silver, bound in 3 braids. The braids were ceremonial. They had not been undone in 50 years. She was not beautiful by Drathari standards. Drathari standards considered her thin, austere, sharp-boned. By human standards, she was something close to terrifying. By her own standards, she was tired. She had been tired for a long time. In front of her on the main viewing wall was a tactical display. The display showed the colony designated Outpost Meridian 9. The display showed in soft red icons the positions of her ground forces. The icons were thinning at a rate that the tactical officer had stopped trying to explain. General Korvath stood to her left. He was 8 feet tall and built like a war monument. His 4 hands were clenched. His ceremonial sashes were trembling. He had not been this angry in 100 years. To her right stood the youngest member of her court, a scribe, a historian. Her name was Ayari Nasari. Iyari was small for a Drathari. She was barely 7 feet tall. Her skin was a pale lavender, the color of an old bruise. Her eyes were teal cyan. She had a quiet way of standing that made people forget she was in the room. This was useful. This was the entire point of a scribe. She was 28 years old, which by Drathari measures was very young indeed. She had been recording the invasion for the historical archives. She had stopped writing 40 minutes ago. The numbers had become too strange to record. Your Radiance, Korvath said. Lyra did not respond. Your Radiance, the 8th Squad, has been eliminated. Lyra did not respond. Your Radiance, I respectfully request authorization to glass the colony from orbit. She turned her head, slowly, so slowly that the movement seemed to take a piece of the room with it. No. Your Radiance. No, Korvath. 300 dead. My warriors. I heard you. 300. To a single defender. A single human defender. This is humiliating. This is an insult to the throne. This is Korvath. This is not war. This is sport. The colony is mocking us. Korvath. He stopped. She stood from the throne. When she stood, the entire room stood. 84 officers, 12 scribes, 6 guards, a bridge crew of 40. All of them rose at once. She walked, slowly, toward the main viewing wall. She stopped in front of it. The display showed a corridor. A man. He was kneeling beside a fallen Drathari soldier. He was pulling something from the soldier's belt. A power cell. He was not in a hurry. He was working, the way a craftsman works. Lyra watched him for a long time. Then she said, "Show me the burn." The viewing wall obeyed, a drone surveillance feed loaded. 20 minutes earlier, a maintenance closet, a small space. A man pulling a glowing pipe from a vent, pressing it against his own arm. 84 officers watched. 12 scribes watched. Iari watched. Lyra did not flinch, but her shoulders very slowly began to lower. Not from anger, from recognition. She stood like that for a long time. Then she turned. To the room. "Leave me." The officers looked at one another. "Leave me." Korvath bristled. "Your radiance with all respect the tactical situation requires." "Leave me, Korvath." He bowed, stiffly. He turned. He marched out. The officers followed. The scribes followed. The guards looked at one another and made the calculation that they would rather lose their position than disobey the Empress, and they followed. The door sealed. Only one person remained, the smallest one. The one no one ever remembered was in the room. Iari Nasari stood very still and prepared to also leave, but she had not been dismissed. She had learned in her 3 years of court service that the Empress's silences were not invitations. They were tests. The test was always, "Are you smart enough to stay?" Iari stayed. The Empress looked at her. "You are still here." "Yes, your radiance." "Why?" "You did not dismiss me." Lyra considered this for a long moment. Then she sat down on the bottom step of the throne dais. She had not sat anywhere except the throne in 80 years. The act looked wrong. It also looked very, very tired. "Sit," she said. "Your radiance I." "Sit, Iari Nasari. I am not asking you as your sovereign. I am asking you as a woman who has had a very long day." Iari sat, on the step, beside her Empress. They did not look at each other. They both looked at the viewing wall, at the man. He had stopped working now. He was sitting against a wall. He was holding something small in his hand, a piece of paper, a photograph. "I had a son once," Lyra said. Iari did not move. 246 years ago, I had a son, half human. His father was an ambassador from Earth, a small man, a kind man. Tobin Hayes. He died of an illness common to humans, old age. He was 68. I was 123. We had 30 years together. They were the only 30 years of my life that I did not understand. Iari did not breathe. His name was Veshin, my son. He grew up in the palace. He was small. He was always small. He had his father's eyes. He had my hands, 4 of them. He could not decide when he was a child whether he was Drathari or human, so he decided to be both. The court hated him for it. The nobles told him he was weaker than us. The humans told him he was stranger than them. He decided he was simply Veshin. Iari very softly. "Where is he?" "He died 200 years ago." "How?" The Empress closed her eyes. "There was a war," she said. "I started it. I was angry and a province had insulted me, and I was 171 years old and very, very stupid. I sent my fleet. The province had a refugee colony in it. Civilians. Veshin was 46 years old by then. He was an officer. He commanded a peacekeeping unit. When the war began, he refused his orders. He stayed with the civilians. He defended them. Alone. For 2 days. 2 days, Iari. Against my fleet. Against my warriors. He held them off until the 2nd day. Then they killed him. He died defending people my anger had condemned." Iari, who had not cried in court for 3 years, felt her face become wet. "I have never told anyone," Larry said. 3 centuries of court, and I have never told anyone. I told the histories that he died of illness. I had the record sealed. I had the witnesses moved to other systems. I made him into a quiet death because I could not face the loud one. She opened her eyes. She looked at the wall, at the human, at the small man sitting against a wall with a photograph in his hand. "He has Veshin's eyes," she said. Iari looked. She could not tell from a tactical feed whether a human had a particular kind of eyes, but she did not say this. "Your radiance." "Yes. Why are you telling me this?" Leary was quiet for a long time. "Because that man," she said down there, "he is not fighting for victory. He is not even fighting for survival. He is fighting because he has decided that he will not let people die who do not deserve to. He is fighting the way Veshin fought. And? And I have been the fleet Iari. I have been the fleet for 300 years. I have been the thing that came for villages and refused to listen. I have been the empire that crushed." She lifted one hand, touched her own forehead, held it there. She did not say anything else for a while. "Then order the fleet to cease fire. Your radiance, cease fire. All ground forces hold position. No further engagement until I command otherwise. Anyone who fires on that man fires on me. Issue the order under my personal seal. Yes, your radiance. And? Yes. I want to go down there." Iari's head came up sharply. "Your radiance. I want to see him with my own eyes. I want to see what kind of man fights like this. I want to." She stopped. "I want to see what would have happened if I had been a better mother." Iari was quiet, then very carefully, "Your radiance. If I may, send me first." The Empress looked at her. "Why?" "Because Korvath is angry. The fleet is shamed. They will not understand if you go yourself not yet. They will think you have lost your reason. They might. They might mutiny. They might." Leary considered. The consideration took a long time. The viewing wall hummed. The man on the screen stood up, tucked the photograph back into his pocket, picked up his rifle, went back out into the smoke. "Send a single shuttle," Leary said. "Send yourself, unarmed. You are a scribe, a historian. You go to record, not to negotiate. He will understand the difference. Tell him I have ordered my forces to stand down. Tell him I would like to know his name. Your radiance this is." "This is what? This is not how empires are run." "No," Leary said. "It is not." She looked at the viewing wall one more time, at the small, bright thing moving through the smoke. "But I am very tired of running mine the other way." Iari Nasari stood up. She bowed deeply. She turned and walked toward the great doors of the throne room. At the door she stopped. "Your radiance. Yes. Your son, Veshin. Yes. He would be proud of you for sending me." Leary did not respond. She had turned her face away. Iari left. The shuttle bay of the Imperial flagship is 2 miles long. The shuttle Iari requested was small, a diplomatic vessel, used for cultural envoy work. It had not been flown in 19 years. The chief engineer questioned her 3 times. She produced the Imperial seal 3 times. He stopped questioning. She sat in the pilot's seat and looked at her hands. Her hands were not shaking. She wished they were. Shaking would have meant her body understood what was happening. The fact that they were still meant her body had not yet caught up. She thumbed the launch sequence. Behind her on the bridge, General Korvath was being told the news. He was not being told it gently. He was being told it by an officer who had drawn the short straw. Korvath was not yet shouting. The not yet was the dangerous part. Below her on the burning colony, Tate Brannigan was reloading a rifle and listening for the next squad. He had been killing for 46 minutes. He had killed 73 Drathari. His body was very tired and his mind was very calm, and somewhere in the back of his head a small thought had begun to form. The thought was this. The thought was that the Drathari had stopped advancing. The thought was that the squads had pulled back. The thought was that something in the last few minutes had changed. He stood up, listened. The colony was burning. The wind was moving smoke across the courtyard. The defense turret at the eastern gate was still firing intermittently, but there was no return fire. There was no sound of advancing soldiers. There was just wind and fire in a single thin mechanical whine that he did not recognize. The whine of something descending, not a drop pod. The whine was wrong for a drop pod. It was softer, slower, a shuttle. Tate looked up at the orange sky. Through the smoke, a small craft was descending, painted in pale silver. No armor plating, no weapons mount, diplomatic markings. It set down 200 yards from him, in the cracked stone of the central plaza, quietly, the way something lands when no one is supposed to know it is landing. Tate did not raise his rifle. He did not lower it either. He stood in the smoke and waited. The shuttle door opened. A small alien stepped out. She was 7 feet tall, which made her small for her kind. Her skin was the color of lavender at dusk. Her hands were empty, all 4 of them. She wore a long gray robe with no insignia. She was carrying a tablet, just a tablet. She walked across the plaza, slowly, each step deliberate, the way you walk toward a wounded animal that has the means to kill you. She stopped at a distance of 20 feet. She bowed, once, low. When she straightened, she spoke, in careful accented English. "My name is Iari Nassari. I am a scribe of the Drathari Imperium. The Empress has ordered all forces to cease engagement. She would like to know your name." Tate did not lower the rifle. He did not raise it either. Behind her in the smoke, the sound of fighting had stopped entirely. The wind moved. A piece of metal somewhere in the colony fell with a long, slow clatter. The alien woman waited. She did not move. She would wait, Tate understood, for as long as it took. He looked at her. For the first time in 46 minutes, the small thing in the back of his head began to wonder what would happen if it did not die today. He took one breath. He let it out. He said, "Tate Brannigan." Across 200 yards of broken stone, the small alien wrote it down. And in the burning colony, in a courtyard full of smoke, and the cooling bodies of soldiers from an army that had not lost in 100 years, a man with a photograph in his pocket and a child's voice still ringing in his ears, took the first step towards something he had not believed in for a very long time. He took the second step a moment later. He was still holding the rifle, but he was walking. And above them, both in a throne room of dark metal and starlight, an empress who had not wept in 300 years pressed her hand against the screen where a small man was walking toward a small scribe, and she let one tear fall finally for the son she had never named out loud. End of part 1. Part 2. 200 yards. Smoke between them. A small alien with a tablet. A small human with a rifle. He had said his name. She had written it down. Neither of them moved. Tate's brain ran the math. She was unarmed. Her 4 hands were empty. Her shuttle had no gun mounts. Her robe had no armor under it. He could see the seams. He could see the pale lavender of her throat where the collar gapped. If this was a trick, if the ceasefire was a lie, if she was bait, then he was dead. Except the drones overhead had been tracking him for 40 minutes. If they wanted him dead, he was dead already. Which meant maybe. The alien woman did something he had not expected. She set the tablet down on the broken stone at her feet. She straightened. She held her empty hands out at her sides, all 4 of them, palms up, a gesture. He did not know if it was a Drathari gesture. He did not know if she had invented it. He did not know if it meant what it looked like. It looked like surrender. Tate Brannigan, who had been ready to die 10 minutes ago, lowered his rifle. Not all the way, but down. The alien woman picked up her tablet again, slowly, the way you pick up something fragile from a room where a child is sleeping. Tate Brannigan, she said. Her English was careful, almost too careful, the way someone speaks a language they have only read in books. Will you walk with me? Walk where? Anywhere. Out of the smoke. There is a building behind you. I would like to sit down. You would like to sit down. I have not sat down since I left the flagship. I am not used to gravity this heavy. My legs are. She stopped. My legs are shaking. I would prefer to sit before they betray me publicly. Tate looked at her. Tate looked at her for a long time. Then a thing happened inside him that had not happened in 3 years. A very small thing. The kind of thing that does not show on a person's face. He felt the corner of his mouth move. Just a fraction. The smallest movement a mouth can make and still be a movement. Not a smile, but the place where a smile used to live. There's a maintenance shed, he said. West of here, roof still on, door still works. Coffee maker probably still works too. What is coffee? You'll find out. He turned and walked. He did not check to see if she was following. He could hear her. Her feet were quieter than a Drathari soldier's, but they were heavier than a human's, the four-armed weight distribution. He had read about it once, in a briefing he was never supposed to attend. She followed, 20 paces behind. She kept the distance. She was telling him with the distance that she was not going to come closer until he said she could. He noticed. He did not say anything. He just kept walking. The maintenance shed was small, concrete walls, metal roof, one window. The Drathari pulse fire had cracked the window an hour ago, but the door still locked from the inside. There was a workbench, a folding chair, a coffee maker that had been bought from a catalog in 2051 and had outlived 3 generations of mining crews. Tate went in first. He swept the corners. Habit. 12 years of habit. Then he stood aside. Iyari Nasari ducked through the doorway. Her head almost touched the ceiling. She straightened. She looked at the workbench, the chair, the coffee maker, the tools on the wall. She looked the way a woman looks at a museum. This is a human room, she said. It's a shed. Yes, a human shed. I have read about them. I have never been in one. You've read about sheds? I have read about everything. She lowered herself onto the folding chair. The chair complained. The chair was not built for a 7-foot lavender woman with 4 arms. But it held. Tate sat on the workbench. His left leg gave out a little as he sat. He covered it. Iyari saw. She did not comment. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The shed smelled like motor oil and old coffee and a man's sweat. Outside somewhere, a piece of metal was still burning. I am supposed to tell you, Iyari said, that the Empress has ordered all forces to stand down, that no Drathari soldier will fire upon you, that she would like the names of your civilian dead and wounded so that they can be tended, that she would like to know the condition of the people in the tunnels. How do you know about the tunnels? We have surveyed the colony. We saw the heat signatures. They are very deep. They are very quiet. They are. And what? And I'm supposed to tell you that, officially, as a representative of the Imperium. I have told you. The official message is complete. Tate watched her. She set the tablet down on her lap. She folded all 4 of her hands over it. She looked at the floor. Now I would like to tell you something else, she said. Unofficially. Yes. Go ahead. She did not go ahead. Not right away. She breathed 3 times. Each breath was deeper than the last, like a swimmer preparing to go under. Then she spoke. My name is Iyari Nasari. I am 28 years old. I am a scribe of the 3rd rank. I have served the imperial court for 3 years. Before that, I was a student of history at the Academy of Torvale. Before that, I was a child in a village called Severian, on a moon called Pelith, in a province called Velarith. She paused. Velarith was conquered by the Drathari Imperium 78 years ago, 3 years before I was born. The conquest killed 40,000 people. My grandmother was one of them. She was killed by a Drathari soldier in a market square. She was selling fish. She was 61 years old. She had two grandchildren. One of them died with her. The other one was my mother. My mother was 11. She survived because she was in the back room when the soldier came. She survived, but the world did not survive in her. Tate sat very still on the workbench. He had been sitting still for a long time. He had been good at sitting still for 3 years. But this was a different kind of still. I grew up in occupied Valarith, Iari said. I learned the Drathari language because if you did not learn it, you did not eat. I learned the Drathari history because if you did not learn it, you did not graduate. I was very good at history. I was so good that they took me away from my village at 15 and sent me to the Imperial Academy. They wanted to make a Drathari out of me. They made a scribe instead. Why a scribe? Because the scribes write the histories. She lifted the tablet. This tablet, the official one, the one the Empire sees, it is full of approved language, approved framing, approved truth. I have been writing in it for 3 years. She set it down. I have another tablet. She did not show him the other tablet. She just touched her chest, briefly, where a pocket would be if her robe had pockets. He understood. The other one, she said, I write the truth in. I have written in it for 3 years also. No one has ever read it. I have been waiting. I have been waiting for a witness who would not be silenced. A witness from outside. Someone the Empire could not bury. Someone who would not be quiet. Tate's throat did something it had not done in a while. Iari, yes. How long have you been waiting? For you. For me. For someone like you. I did not know what they would look like. I did not know if they would come. I was beginning to think they would not. I am 28 years old. I could have written quietly for 200 more years. I am a Drathari. We live long. I have a lot of years to be quiet in. She looked up. Her eyes were teal cyan. They had flecks of silver at the iris. They were not crying, but the rim was wet. And then this morning, she said, I watched a human man with no army hold an entire imperial fleet at a single colony. And I watched the Empress sit down on the floor of the throne room. For the first time in 80 years. She sat on the floor like a tired woman. And I thought to myself, Iari Nasari, this is the witness. I'm not a witness. I'm a security officer. You are what you say you are. I am not arguing with you. I am only telling you what I saw. What did you see? I saw a man who fought an empire alone and did not stop. I saw a queen who decided after 300 years that the empire she ruled was not the empire she wanted to die, having ruled. I saw two people across the gap of stars who turned out to be carrying the same wound. I saw. She stopped. She breathed once. I saw a beginning Tate Brannigan, and I have been writing endings for so long that I forgot the other thing existed. Tate could not look at her. He looked at the wall. He looked at the coffee maker. He looked at his own hands. They were trembling. He did not know when they had started. Iari. Yes, I am very tired. I know. I am very, very tired. I know. I don't know what to do with what you just told me. You do not have to do anything with it. I just had to set it down. I have been carrying it. I have been carrying it since I was a child. It was getting heavy. He nodded. He just nodded. For a long time, the only sound was the wind outside the shed and the slow drip of something condensing on the coffee maker. Then Iari said, there is something you should know. What? My ship's sensors. They have been monitoring local communications. There was a distress call from this colony 40 minutes after the attack began. Tate looked at her. It reached your republic, she said. It reached the Republic Council on Earth. 40 minutes later, it was acknowledged. 3 minutes after that, it was filed in the diplomatic queue. Not the military Q. Do you understand the difference? Yes, they are not coming. They were never coming. You knew. I have known for 2 years that they were never coming. Iari looked at him. She did not say anything for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than it had been. Tate Brannigan, the empire that sent me does not deserve the man who sat down to talk with me today. But neither does the one that left you here. You should know that. From a scribe. From the kind of woman who keeps the records. You should know that you are not what either of us was sent to bury. He looked at her. He looked at her for a long time. Then he did something he had not done in 3 years. He laughed. It was a small laugh. It was a tired laugh. It was the laugh of a man at the end of a very long road who has just realized that the road possibly was not the only road. Iari Nasari. Yes, that is the kindest thing anyone has said to me in a long time. I am sorry it had to come from an alien. I'm not sorry. She blinked. She had not expected the answer. He stood up from the workbench. His leg was steadier now. I have to go back out. There is no one to fight. The order has been given. They will not engage you. There's still 17 of them in the eastern courtyard. Their comm relay went down 40 minutes ago. They didn't get the order. They're going to come for me as soon as they figure out where I am. Then stay in here. Can't. Why? Because if I stay in here, they'll find this building eventually. And you are in this building. And the Empress sent you. And I do not think the Empress would forgive me if I let her scribe die in a shed she had not had the chance to read. Iari looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, I am coming with you. No. Yes. Iari. Tate. You are unarmed. You are not a soldier. I am a witness. Witnesses follow their subjects. It is in the contract. I signed it. I had to study it in 3 languages. He looked at her. There was a thing on her face that he had not seen in 3 years. The thing was stubbornness, the good kind. The kind that comes from a person who has been quiet for too long and has finally decided that being quiet is the more dangerous thing. He did not have time to argue. He nodded. Stay behind me. I will. If I tell you to drop, you drop. I will. If I tell you to run, you run. You don't ask questions. I will. He opened the door. He stepped out into the smoke. Iari Nasari stepped out behind him. 28 years old, the granddaughter of a fish seller. She did not look back. She closed the door of the maintenance shed. Deep in the tunnels, 3 levels below the colony floor, Dr. Inez Vargas was looking at a screen and trying to make her hand stop shaking. She had not planned to look at the screen. She had planned to take inventory. The bunker had been set up for emergencies, but no one had actually checked the contents in a year. There were 204 people down here, including her and Riva and Soren. Some of them had allergies, some had heart conditions, some were diabetic, some were old, some were pregnant. There was a woman named Hannelore Vesely in the 3rd alcove who had a peanut allergy bad enough to kill her in 12 minutes. Inez had to know who needed what. So she had pulled the colony medical database onto a portable terminal. She had been working through it for 40 minutes, patient by patient, cross-referencing intake records against the head count. She had reached the children. There were 9 children in the bunker. Inez knew all of them. She had treated all of them at some point in the last 6 months, mostly for skinned knees, 1 ear infection, 1 broken arm from a fall down a set of utility stairs. She had reached Marigold Vance. Marigold's record was thin. The colony intake form was thin. 3 pages, the standard ones: name, age, foster guardians, medical history. Inez had read it before, 3 weeks ago, the night Marigold had been brought to her, the night the Halpern family, the night Marigold's foster parents. She had read it before, but she had only read the first 3 pages. There was a 4th page. The 4th page was the original intake, from 3 years earlier. From when Marigold had first arrived in human-controlled space as a refugee from a transport ship. Inez had not read it. She read it now. The transport ship was named on the fourth page. The transport ship was the Eris Voyager. Inez Vargas set the portable terminal down on her knees. She did not move for a while. Then she stood up. She did not run. She did not call out. She crossed the bunker very calmly. She walked past the row of cots where the children were sleeping. She walked past Soren, who was crouched over a wall panel with two tools in his teeth and a third in his hand soldering a relay he had been building for the last 40 minutes. He glanced up. She did not stop. She walked past Hannelore Vesely, who was eating crackers from a bag and reading a book. She walked to the corner where Reva Solen sat with her back against the wall watching the wall screen. The wall screen still had the helmet camera feed. Tate had left the camera on. It was showing a slow, jolted view of his shoulder. He was walking. He was talking quietly with someone Inez could not see. Reva. Yes. I need you outside in the corridor. Reva looked up. Reva had been a colony administrator for 31 years. She had been an emergency response officer before that. She had been a paramedic before that. She knew the tone of a sentence that meant, come now and do not ask why. She stood. She followed Inez into the corridor. Inez closed the bunker door behind them. She held up the portable terminal. She did not speak. She just held it up. Reva read. Reva read for a long time. When she finished, she did not say anything. She put one hand flat against the corridor wall. She kept it there. She put her other hand against her mouth. She kept it there too. Reva. Yes. The Eris Voyager. Yes. 3 years ago. Yes. The pirates. Yes. The same ship. The same ship, Inez. That little girl. In there. Sleeping. With the yellow ribbon. Yes. She was on the same ship as his wife, as his daughter, 3 years ago. Reva closed her eyes. She is the only child from that ship who lived. Yes? He doesn't know. He doesn't know. He has been working at this colony for 2 years. 2 years. And he has not known. He didn't go down to that deck, Inez. He stayed away from her. On purpose. He didn't want to know. He doesn't know. Inez looked back at the bunker door. Through the door somewhere, a small girl with a yellow ribbon was sleeping in a cot with her arms wrapped around a stuffed rabbit that Reva had given her on her first night in the colony. The same ship, the same attack, the same killers. His wife, his daughter, her mother, her father. The universe had been carrying this girl 3 years until it could put her down in the only arms in the galaxy that needed her. Inez. Yes. He cannot know yet. Reva. He cannot know until he is back inside, until he is safe, until this is over. If he knows now while he is out there with 17 Drathari left in that courtyard with a plasma burn down to the bone with whatever he is right now. Reva, hey. If he knows now, Inez, he will come apart, and we need him to not come apart for another hour. He deserves to know. He deserves a lot of things. He deserves to live first. Inez did not argue. She put the portable terminal in her pocket. She nodded. The two women stood in the corridor for a long moment. They did not look at each other. They looked at the door of the bunker, where a small girl with a yellow ribbon was sleeping, where the only person in the world who shared Tate Brannigan's grief was 3 weeks into being 7 years old and did not know she had been waiting her whole life for him. Reva. Yes. He has to come back. He has to come back, Inez. You make him come back. I am one woman in a tunnel 3 levels down. You make him come back anyway. Reva did not answer. She just put her hand on Inez's shoulder. The way a woman puts her hand on another woman's shoulder when there is nothing else to give, and the hand will have to be enough. The eastern courtyard was a square of cracked stone 200 feet across. It had been the place where the colony's children played soccer. Now it was full of broken drop pod casings and the bodies of Drathari soldiers and a single small fire in the middle that had been a delivery cart this morning. Tate moved into the courtyard from the north side. Iyari followed, behind him by 10 paces. He had wanted her to stay further back. She had refused. She had said very quietly that a witness who cannot see her subject is not a witness. She had said even more quietly that she was not going to let him die alone. He had not argued. He did not have the energy to argue. The 17 Drathari were waiting on the south side of the courtyard. They had been waiting for him for 40 minutes. They had set up a half-circle formation. They had positioned a heavy gunner behind the wreckage of the cart. They had cleared the windows of the adjacent buildings. They had done everything right. They were going to lose anyway. Their squad leader saw him. Their squad leader raised a fist, 2 fingers up, opened fire on contact. The squad leader did not see Iyari yet. Iyari was behind Tate's shoulder, in the shadow. When the squad leader saw her, his fist dropped, 2 fingers down. Hold. The squad leader had seen a scribe's robe. Drathari soldiers, even the ones who had not received the ceasefire, even the ones who had been cut off from communications for 40 minutes knew what a scribe's robe meant. Scribes did not enter combat zones. Scribes were court personnel. Scribes were untouchable. The squad leader stared at Iyari for a long time. Iyari stepped out from behind Tate. She raised one hand, showed her empty palm, lowered it. She did not say anything. She did not need to. The robe said it. The squad leader looked at his sub-commanders. The sub-commanders looked at each other. They began to lower their weapons, which was when the heavy gunner, who had not been looking at the scribe, who had been looking at Tate, who had been waiting 40 minutes to avenge his squad mates, opened fire. The plasma round went past Iyari's left shoulder. It missed her by 4 inches. It hit the wall behind her, and the wall came apart in white light. Tate moved before his brain registered the movement. He shoved Iyari sideways, hard. She went down behind a low concrete planter that had once held marigolds. The actual flowers, the ones the colony botanist had planted 6 summers ago. The squad leader was already screaming at the heavy gunner. The squad leader was screaming a Drathari word Iyari knew. The word was an order to stand down. The word was being ignored, because the heavy gunner did not care about scribes anymore. The heavy gunner cared about the man. The next 60 seconds were not a fight. They were a clearing. Tate had been waiting for it. He had been waiting for 40 minutes. His body was tired, but his body remembered. His body had been doing this since he was 18. He went left first, the blind spot in the half circle, the place where the second row Drathari had been told to watch the right flank and had been watching the wrong way. He took the second row Drathari down with 2 rounds. Then the third. Then he was already moving across the back wall. The heavy gunner had to swing his weapon. The weapon was heavy, the swing was slow. Tate was inside the swing before it finished. The heavy gunner died with a marine combat knife in the seam under his lower right arm. It was the same seam Tate had used in the first corridor. It was a seam Tate had drilled in his head for 10 years. It was the seam that opened the armor. The squad leader fought him last. The squad leader was good. The squad leader had killed 40 humans in his career. The squad leader had not killed 40 humans like this one. He died on his feet. When it was over, Tate stood in the middle of the eastern courtyard with 17 dead Drathari around him and 1 alien scribe behind a concrete planter, and his right side was warm in a way that meant blood. The plasma had clipped his right shoulder during the second exchange. He had not noticed. He noticed now. He sat down. He did not mean to sit down. His legs simply stopped doing what legs do. He sat down hard. Iyari Nasari stood up from behind the planter. She had a small scrape on her forehead from a piece of concrete that had cracked off the wall when the first plasma round hit it. She walked across the courtyard. She walked across 17 dead soldiers of an empire that had killed her grandmother. She knelt down in front of Tate Brannigan. She did not speak. She lifted her tablet, the official one. She turned it sideways. She used a corner of her own gray robe to wipe blood from his face. The blood was not all his. She wiped it anyway. He looked at her. He said, "You're not supposed to." "I am not supposed to do many things today. I have stopped counting." Iyari. Yes. My shoulder. "I know, I see it. We will go back to the shed. There is a coffee maker. I do not know how to use a coffee maker, but there is one. You can teach me while I bandage your shoulder." "You don't know how to bandage." "I have read about it." "You've read about it." "I have read about everything." He laughed. It was the second time in 3 years. He had laughed twice in the same hour. He got back to his feet. He could not use the right arm. He used the left. Iyari steadied him. He did not refuse the help. He could not afford to refuse it. They walked back to the maintenance shed. Above them, in the orange sky, surveillance drones were transmitting the entire scene to the Imperial flagship, to the throne room, to the chamber where Empress Lyre Sayelitha sat very still and watched a man she had not killed, and a scribe she had sent in her place, and a moment of mercy in a courtyard that had been a place for children's games once. She watched. She did not move. And 8 decks down in the office of the High General of the Drathari Imperium, a different person watched the same feed, and his hands began to shake. Not from fear, from a kind of rage he had not felt in 200 years. General Korvath was 8 feet of bone and muscle and old grievance. He had served 3 empresses. He had served Lyri for 296 years. He had been her left hand for so long that the court had begun in private to call him Lyri's blade. He had loved her. He would never have used the word. The word was a human word. Drathari did not use it the way humans used it, but it was the closest word. He had loved her, and he had watched her for the past 4 hours become a woman he did not recognize. He had watched her sit down on the steps of the throne dais. He had watched her order 300 Drathari deaths to be unpunished. He had watched her send an unarmed scribe down to a hostile colony. He had watched her press her hand against a screen where a human walked with that scribe, and his blood was on her scribe's robe, and the Empress had not had the human shot. He had watched all of this. And now he had watched the human kill 17 more Drathari in a courtyard while the scribe stood behind him. The scribe had stood behind him. Korvath understood. He understood with a clarity that was almost peaceful. He understood that the Empress was no longer fit to rule. He had not arrived at this conclusion overnight. He had been arriving at it for 30 years. He had been arriving at it ever since the Empress had pulled their fleets back from the Valarith reconquest. Ever since she had refused to authorize the Torvale purges. Ever since she had granted that delegation of Kasari mercy when the law clearly demanded execution. She was old, she was soft, she was perhaps losing her edge. He had been waiting. He had been waiting because he was loyal. He had been waiting because he loved her. He had been waiting because he had believed that her decline was a thing that would resolve itself in time, that she would in the end hand him the throne the way she had handed him so many things before. But today she had sent a scribe. Today she had let a single human kill 300 Drathari and walk away to do it again. Today she had stopped being his Empress and become something else. Something he did not have a word for. Something his loyalty could no longer reach. Korvath stood up from his desk. He walked to the door of his office. He opened the door. 6 of his personal guards stood outside. They had been his guard for 80 years. They had killed for him. They had bled for him. They had never once questioned him. They did not question him now. With me. They followed. He walked through the corridors of the flagship the way he had walked them for 2 centuries. The crew moved aside. Some of them saluted. Some of them simply lowered their eyes. None of them looked at him too closely. He was the Empress's blade. You did not look the blade in the eye. He took the lift to the bridge level. He stepped off. The bridge officers turned. Some of them straightened. Some of them began to salute. Stand at ease. They stood at ease. He walked to the central console, the orbital weapons console, the console that controlled the 4 primary lance batteries on the underside of the Eternal Dominion. The console that, if used correctly, could turn the surface of a planet into glass. He placed his hand on the panel. The panel was keyed to his print. Of course it was. He was the High General. He could use the lances. He could use any weapon on the ship. Except the senior weapons officer, a Drathari named Velmarash, did not move from her station. General Korvath, Lieutenant, what are your orders? Charge the primary lance battery. Target the colony's surface. Concentrated burn. Quadrant 6. Velmarash did not move. General, you heard me. I heard you. I am not certain I understood you. Charge the lance, Lieutenant. The Empress has issued a ceasefire. I am aware. Sir, I am aware of the Empress's order, Lieutenant. The Empress is not herself. I am invoking emergency tactical authority under Article 31. I will accept full responsibility. Charge the lance. Velmarash looked at her consul. Velmarash looked at her general. Velmarash had been a weapons officer for 52 years. She had loved her general for at least 30 of those years. She had loved her Empress for all 52. She did not move. Sir, she said, with respect, Article 31 requires the Empress to be incapacitated. The Empress is not incapacitated. She is. She is what? She is changed, sir. She is not incapacitated. Charge the lance, Lieutenant. Sir. Korvath drew the ceremonial blade from his hip. He laid it on the console. The blade was the symbol of his rank. Drathari High Generals did not draw the blade lightly. The blade had two states. Sheathed, it was a symbol. Drawn, it was a command. To disobey a drawn blade was a capital offense. To draw the blade without cause was also a capital offense. He had drawn it. Velmarash looked at the blade. She put her hands on the charging console. She began the sequence. It was at exactly that moment that the bridge doors opened and Empress Lirai Sayeltha walked onto the bridge with her 4 hands at her sides and no guards behind her. The bridge fell silent. Velmarash's hands stopped on the console. Korvath turned. He turned slowly. He did not bow. The Empress walked across the bridge floor. She walked to the central console. She stopped 6 feet from Korvath. She looked down at the drawn blade. She looked up at her general. Korvath spoke first. Your Radiance, Korvath, I am invoking Article 31. On what grounds? On the grounds that you are no longer fit to rule. The bridge officers did not move. They did not breathe. The senior comms officer who had been about to issue an alert to Imperial security kept his hand frozen above the panel. Lirai looked at Korvath. She looked at him for a long time. Then she said very quietly, Korvath, I have known you for 296 years. Yes. You held my hand when my son died. Yes. You burned the witnesses for me. Yes. You have served the throne with a loyalty that no empress in 3,000 years has been given by her blade. Yes. And I am very, very sorry that I am about to do this to you. Korvath did not understand the sentence until it was over. By the time he understood, 2 members of the Empress's personal guard had stepped through the bridge doors behind her. They had been waiting in the corridor, quietly, loyally, for 3 minutes. They had been waiting on her signal. She had not given a signal. She had simply walked in. The guards had understood anyway. They moved across the bridge in 4 long strides. They placed their hands on Korvath's shoulders. He did not resist. He could have. He was the High General. He was the strongest man on the ship. He could have killed both guards in 8 seconds and reached the lance controls in another 4. He did not. He looked at the Empress. The Empress did not look away. Your Radiance. Yes, Korvath. I loved you, the closest a Drathari can. I loved you. I know. You are throwing away 3 centuries of empire for 1 human. I am not throwing it away, Korvath. I am setting it down. You are weak. I am tired. Same thing. It is not the same thing. It is what we say to keep doing what we have always done. She stepped closer. She put one of her 4 hands on the side of his face, briefly, the way a sister might. I have ruled 300 years, she said, and in those 300 years I have not allowed myself to feel one true thing. Today I have felt 3, and I will not let you take from me the one thing that has finally made me feel something. Not even for you, Korvath. Not even for the love of 3 centuries. She stepped back. She looked at the guards. Take him to the high cells. He is to be treated as a prisoner of the throne. He is to be served 3 meals a day. He is to be permitted visitors. He is not to be harmed. Anyone who harms him will answer to me. The guards bowed. They led Korvath off the bridge. He did not look back. He did not need to. He had said what he needed to say. The Empress turned to the bridge crew. She looked at Velmarash. Velmarash had not moved. Her hand was still hovering over the charging console. Lieutenant, your radiance. You did not charge the lance. Know your radiance. Even when the blade was drawn. Know your radiance. Why? Velmarash took a long time to answer. When she did, her voice was very quiet. Because my mother lived in Velarith, your radiance. When the fleet came, she did not survive. I was 8 years old. The general who burned my mother's village received a medal from your throne. I have served on this bridge for 52 years. I have charged the lance 300 times. I have killed villages full of mothers who were someone else's daughters. I have done it because you ordered it, and because you were the Empress, and because I was loyal. She lifted her hand from the console. And today, your radiance, you ordered me to stop. So I stopped. And when the general told me to charge again, I thought of my mother. And I did not charge. Because if the Empress can change after 3 centuries, then perhaps I can also change. Perhaps it is not too late for me. Lyrae looked at her for a long moment. Then she walked across the bridge. She stood in front of Velmarash. She bowed. The Empress of the Drathari Imperium bowed to a weapons officer. The bridge did not breathe. When she straightened, Lyrae said loud enough for the room, "From this day, Lieutenant Velmarash is captain of this bridge. Captain Velmarash, issue the following order. All fleet weapon systems are to be safed, permanently, until I personally unlock them. The ceasefire over Meridian 9 stands. We do not engage. We do not threaten. We wait." Velmarash did not speak. She could not. She was crying, quietly. Drathari did not weep often. When they did, the tears were the color of pale violet. She nodded. She turned to her console. She safed the weapons. The Empress walked off the bridge. She walked to a small private chamber 3 quarters away. She went inside. She closed the door. She sat down on the floor with her back against the door. She did not move for a long time. Then she pulled out a small thing she carried in the inner fold of her ceremonial robe. A thing she had carried for 200 years. A thing no one in the Empire knew she had. A small carved bird, wooden, made by a half-human boy at the age of 9, given to his mother because she had told him once that she did not have any toys when she was young. She held the bird in 2 of her 4 hands. She held it against her chest. She closed her eyes. In the burning colony, 2 quarters below the maintenance shed, a man with a bandaged shoulder sat on a workbench and watched an alien woman fumble with a coffee maker that was older than her empire. And in a bunker 3 levels under both of them, a small girl with a yellow ribbon turned over in her sleep, and she put one small hand against the chest of a woman doctor who had been holding her for an hour, and she did not wake up, but she smiled. End of part 2, part 3. The coffee maker hissed. Iyari Nasari jumped. She actually jumped. 7 feet of lavender-skinned imperial scribe, 4 hands, 3 years at the Drathari court, and she jumped at a coffee maker. Tate, against his will, smiled. The smile cost him something. He paid it anyway. It's just steam, he said. It sounds like a small animal. It's just water. Water does not make sounds like that. Drathari water does not make sounds like that. Drathari water doesn't go through a 100-year-old human pump that hasn't been descaled since the Mars colonies. What is descaled? You'll find out. She looked at him sideways. You keep saying that. What? You will find out. You said it about coffee. You said it about descaled. You said it about a thing called duct tape. I do not know whether you are teaching me or threatening me. Both, mostly the first. She made a small sound, a sound he had not heard from a Drothary before, a sound that if a human had made it, he would have called a laugh. He filed it. He filed it carefully. The way a man files things he does not yet have the right to keep. His shoulder hurt. The Drathari med kit she had pulled from the shuttle was extraordinary. It had sealed the burn in 2 minutes. The shoulder would scar, but it would work. Iyari had administered the kit herself. Her 4 hands had made it efficient. He had watched her work and decided that whatever the Empire said about scribes, this one knew how to keep someone alive. The shed smelled of coffee now. The shed smelled like a place with 2 people in it, a place that was against all available evidence not on fire. His comm crackled. The signal was patched together. Soren's work. The boy had punched a relay through the Drathari jamming from inside the bunker. It had taken him an hour. He was 24 years old, and he had just done what the Republic's Communications Corps could not do. Mr. Brannigan, Soren, you alive? Mostly. There's something. Spit it out. The Empress is on the surface. Tate looked across the shed at Iyari. Iyari looked across the shed at Tate. Where? Central Plaza. She landed 2 minutes ago. Just her and 4 guards, no fleet movement. She's just standing there. Just standing. Just standing. Tate stood up. His leg protested. He told it to be quiet. He told it the way a man tells his body things when his body is no longer in charge. I'm going. I am going with you, Yari said. He did not argue. He picked up his rifle. He picked it up out of habit. He looked at it for a second. He set it down again. Iyari saw. She did not say anything. She just opened the door of the shed. Outside, the smoke had thinned. The wind had shifted. A long, pale streak of sky was visible to the east, the color of a bruise that had begun to heal. Tate walked through it. Iyari walked beside him, not behind, beside. The Central Plaza had a fountain in the middle. The fountain had not worked in 11 years. The colony had argued about repairing it at 3 town meetings. The repairs had never been authorized. In front of the dry fountain stood Empress Luri Sayeltha. She had taken off her ceremonial armor. She was wearing a long, plain gray robe, the same color as Iyari's. No insignia, no crown. She looked in the dirty wind of a dying colony like a tall woman at the end of a tired day. Behind her, 4 guards stood at attention. Their weapons were holstered. Their visors were up. She watched Tate walk across the plaza. He walked slowly. She had time to look at him. She looked at his shoulder, the bandage, the blood that had soaked through the bandage and dried again. She looked at his left leg, the slight drag. She looked at his face. The face was 32 years old. It looked 50. There was dirt across one cheekbone in a line that suggested he had wiped his face with the back of a glove, and the glove had been covered in dust. She looked at his eyes. She had been waiting to look at his eyes. They were not Veshin's eyes. She had known they would not be. She had known deep down the whole time. She had wanted them to be. She had told Iyari they were. She had said it out loud. She had needed to say it out loud. The needing had been the thing, but now that she could see him properly, now that he was 20 feet away, his eyes were his own. They were not her son's. They were a stranger's. They were tired and human and very, very far from where they had begun. And somehow the not being Veshin made them more, not less. Because Veshin was already loved. Veshin had had her in his short life. He had had her hands and her voice and her promises. This man, this man had had no one for 3 years. This man had been alone. She lowered herself then, slowly, onto one knee. Her ceremonial robe gathered around her on the broken stone. She lowered her 4 hands. She placed them palms up on her thigh. The Empress of 314 worlds knelt in the dirt of a colony she had nearly destroyed. Behind her, the 4 guards did not move. They did not gasp. They did not protest. They had been chosen very carefully that morning. The Empress had chosen them after the bridge. She had chosen the ones who would understand. Tate stopped 6 feet from her. He did not kneel. He did not bow. He looked down at her. He was not certain what he was supposed to do. Yari at his shoulder said very quietly, "Tate, she is not surrendering. She is apologizing. To me, to everyone in the tunnels under us. You are just the one she can see." He looked at the Empress. The Empress looked up at him. Her face was very still. She spoke. Her English was good, better than Ayari's, older. The pronunciation of a woman who had learned the language from a man who had loved her 200 years ago and who had spoken it to her at night the way people speak languages to each other when the languages are private. "Tate Brannigan. Empress. My name is Lyre." He did not know what to do with that. He just nodded. "Lyre," he said. She nodded back. She did not stand. She stayed on her knee. Her 4 hands stayed open. "My fleet will leave human space within 10 hours. We will not return. The order has been signed and sealed and broadcast on Imperial channels. It cannot be revoked. Not by me. Not by anyone who comes after me." He nodded. "Your civilians will be returned to the surface. We will assist in rebuilding the colony. Material, engineers, medical, whatever you need, for as long as you need it. It will be paid for from the Imperial Reconstruction account. I will not be using that account for anything else." He nodded. "And?" She stopped. She breathed. She was not used to breathing under the weight of so many words. "And I would like to ask you for one thing." "What?" "Stand with me, in an hour, in front of my fleet, so they can see that what I have done today, I have not done in shame. So they can see the face I have decided to honor. So they understand." Tate looked at her. His brain ran the math the way it always did. She was asking him to stand on a stage, not literally, but effectively, in front of cameras, in front of soldiers, in front of an empire. He had spent 3 years trying to be invisible. She was asking him to be visible. He almost said no. He almost said no the way a wounded animal says no, from the inside of a place that did not believe in standing in light. Then he thought of Marigold. He did not know yet why he thought of her. Not in detail. Not the thing Inez and Riva were carrying in their pockets 3 levels under his feet. He just thought of the small girl with the yellow ribbon who had said in a corridor that morning, "You look like my dad." He thought of 200 people who would walk back up into a colony they had thought they would die in. He thought of what it would mean for them to know that the man they had watched on a helmet camera had not crawled away when it was over. He nodded. "All right." The Empress closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. The wet was the color of pale violet. She stood up. She extended one hand, the first of her 4. Just one. Slowly. The way you extend a hand to someone who has been alone for a long time and may have forgotten how hands work. Tate looked at the hand. He reached out. His own hand was small in hers. Bloody. Dirty. The fingers were stiff from the cold and the burns. The hand of an empress and the hand of a colony security officer met above broken stone in the central plaza of Outpost Meridian 9. A drone hovering 80 feet above them recorded the moment. The drone was transmitting to the Imperial flagship. The transmission was being relayed to every Imperial ship in the fleet. The transmission was being relayed also by a small, unauthorized signal to a satellite over Earth that fed directly into Republic diplomatic affairs. Iyari had set up the second relay before they walked out of the shed. She had not asked permission. She was, after all, a scribe. The hand clasp lasted 4 seconds. 4 seconds is not a long time. 4 seconds was enough. They walked back to the shuttle together. She walked beside him. Not in front, not behind. Beside. Her 4 guards followed at a respectful distance. Iyari walked on Tate's other side. He looked at the shuttle. He looked at the Empress. What now? Now, she said, there is a thing I must do in front of my fleet. It will take an hour. I would like you to come with me. Up there, to your ship. To my ship. He thought about it. He thought about the children. He thought about Riva. He thought about a child with a yellow ribbon. I'll come, he said, but I'm coming back down. Yes, down here, to the colony, to my people. Yes, you promise. She looked at him for a long moment. Tate Brannigan, she said, I have not made a promise in 120 years. I am about to make one, to you, in front of the witness who is recording it. Listen carefully. I'm listening. You will go up. You will come back down. You will not be detained. You will not be questioned. You will not be made a guest of any imperial court for any longer than you choose. You will return to this colony before nightfall by local time. I will return you myself on the same shuttle. If I break this promise, if anything happens to you that you have not consented to, then the woman beside you, Iyari Nasari, has my permission and my command to walk out of the throne room and tell every human she ever meets the full and complete truth of who I was when I was young, which would be, I believe, a punishment more lasting than death. He looked at Iyari. Iyari nodded. That is the truth, she said. I would do it, with great pleasure. He almost laughed. He nodded instead. All right. He boarded the shuttle. He sat down in a seat designed for a 7-foot person. He looked very small in it. He did not complain. He did not look around. He just put his hands on his knees and waited. The shuttle lifted. He watched through the small window the colony fall away beneath him. The fires, the broken pods, the dry fountain in the central plaza. Somewhere down there, 200 people were still in the dark, and they did not know yet that the dark was ending. The hangar bay of the Eternal Dominion was a place built to make you feel small. It worked. Tate Brannigan stepped onto the deck of the Imperial flagship, and he understood in a way no briefing could have prepared him for what an empire actually was. The hangar was 2 miles long. The ceiling was so high that there were clouds in it. Actual clouds. Drathari atmospheric processors generated them as part of climate control. They drifted lazily across the upper structure like a sky over a field. Below the clouds, 8,000 soldiers stood in formation. They had been notified an hour ago. They had been notified that the Empress was returning. They had been notified that she was bringing the human. They had assembled. They were quiet. Drathari military silence is not human silence. It is the silence of a forest with a very large animal in it. A silence that holds. A silence that watches. Tate walked. The Empress walked beside him. Iyari walked behind them now. She had stepped back. This moment was not for her. This moment was for the Empress and the man. They walked the length of the formation. Tate did not look at the faces. He could not. He kept his eyes on the floor 20 feet ahead. His left leg dragged a little. He hit it. He thought about Riva's Sunday soup. He thought about the way Riva had cut carrots. He thought about the small round cutting board she used. He thought about anything except where he was. He had to think about something, because if he thought about where he was, if he thought about who was watching, if he thought about the fact that he, Tate Brannigan, a man who had not been able to attend his own wife's memorial service because he had been on a mission halfway across the sector and had been required to remain on station. If he thought about that, he would come apart. So he thought about carrots. He thought about carrots for the entire length of the formation. At the end of the hangar, on a raised platform, the senior officers of the fleet were waiting. Captains, commanders, admirals, 40 of them. They wore ceremonial sashes. They had been told on the way in what was about to happen. They had not been told why. The Empress stopped at the platform. She did not climb it. She turned and faced her fleet. Tate stood at her left shoulder. Iyari stood at her right. The four guards stood behind. Beyond them, 8,000 soldiers held formation in absolute stillness. The Empress spoke. Her voice was carried by a microphone built into the hangar itself. The voice traveled the 2 miles of the deck and reached the soldiers at the far end. Every word was clean. She spoke in Drathari. Tate did not understand it. He did not need to. He understood the rhythm. He understood the spaces. He understood the way her voice held one word for longer than the others. He understood by the way the formation moved. It was not a movement you would see if you were not watching. It was the smallest possible movement. A faint stiffening and then a release. 8,000 soldiers hearing a story most of them had never heard, holding still in the way bodies hold when they are receiving something they will carry home. She spoke briefly. She named her son. She named her shame. She named finally the human at her shoulder. She told them that today she had chosen to honor a man who had fought her army for 200 strangers. She told them that her son had once done the same. She told them last that she had been the wrong kind of empress for a very long time, and that today she was choosing to be a different kind. She turned then to face Tate. She knelt again, on the floor of her own flagship, in front of 8,000 of her soldiers. The kneel was a Drathari ceremonial form. Iyari would explain it to Tate later in the shuttle going down. The kneel had not been performed by a Drathari empress in 2,000 years. It was the form for a sovereign honoring someone she considered in that moment her equal in dignity. It was the kneel that one queen had performed for the warrior who had killed her in single combat in a story told to Drathari children. It was the kneel of the throne acknowledging that in this moment the throne was not the highest thing in the room. She lifted her 4 hands, palms up. She bowed her head. She stayed there. 8,000 soldiers behind her dropped to one knee. They did it as a single movement, not because they had been ordered to, because they had understood. Tate Brannigan stood at the front of the hangar of the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion, and an empire knelt to him. He did not know what to do. He had nothing in his training for this. He had nothing in his life for this. He looked down at their empress. He looked at her bowed head. He looked at the 4 hands open at her sides. He did the only thing he could think of. He reached out. He took one of her hands. He lifted it, gently. He helped her stand. He did not say anything. He did not need to. He just lifted her hand and helped her up and held her hand for one more second after she was standing. Behind her, 8,000 soldiers slowly rose. He let her hand go. She nodded. He nodded back. And then a single voice from the formation broke the silence. A captain, 3 rows back. He raised a fist. He shouted one word. Iyari behind Tate said softly, "It is a word for honored guest. From the old empire, before we became conquerors. It has not been shouted in this hangar in 800 years. The captain shouted it again. Another voice shouted it back. Another. In 30 seconds, 8,000 Drathari soldiers were shouting a single word at a small human standing on the deck of their flagship. Tate's eyes were wet. He let them be wet. He stood in the noise. He stood in the noise for a long time. When he came back down the shuttle ramp, the air of Outpost Meridian 9 smelled different. The smoke was thinning. Reva was waiting for him. She was standing at the bottom of the ramp, her arms crossed, her face calm. Behind her, the entire colony stood in a loose group. 200 people. They had come up from the tunnels 20 minutes ago. They were dirty and tired, and they were squinting at the late afternoon light the way people squint after a long time underground. Some of them had been crying. Some of them were holding each other. Inez stood beside Reva. Inez was holding Marigold. Marigold had her yellow ribbon. She had her stuffed rabbit. She had her arms around Inez's neck. She saw Tate. She did not let go of Inez's neck, but her face changed. Her face did the thing children's faces do when they have been holding something inside them for an entire day, and now they do not have to hold it anymore. Tate walked down the ramp. He walked across the broken stone of the plaza. He stopped in front of Riva. He did not say anything. She did not say anything. She just stepped forward. Her arms were not crossed anymore. They were open. She put them around him. She put her arms around him the way she had wanted to for 2 years and had not been allowed. She put her arms around him the way a woman who is not your mother, but is the closest thing you have left, puts her arms around you when the thing you were afraid of did not, after all, happen. He let her. He stood there and he let her. When she let go, she put both hands on his face. She did not speak. She just looked at him. Then she stepped aside. Inez stepped forward. Inez did not hug him. Inez did not have a free hand. Inez had a child in her arms. Inez said, "Tate." "Inez, there's something I need to tell you." He looked at her. "What?" She looked down at Marigold. She looked back up at him. "Riva and I have been carrying something for the last 6 hours. We didn't tell you because we didn't think you could survive knowing it. We were wrong. We should have trusted you, I am telling you now." Tate did not move. He did not breathe. He had a sense the way a man has a sense when he is about to walk into a room that will change his life, that he was about to walk into a room that would change his life. Inez, this child, Marigold, she came to Meridian 9 3 years ago as a refugee. She was 4 years old. Her foster parents took her in. They died 4 weeks ago. I have been her guardian for 3 weeks. I read her file again this morning. I read all of it, the original intake. Tate's hands began to shake. Inez, she came from a ship. Inez, she came from the Eris Voyager. Tate. He did not move. He could not. The wind moved past him. The smoke moved past him. The voices of the civilians moved past him. He could not. "The same ship," Inez said. Her voice was very steady, the way a doctor's voice is steady when the news she is delivering is the news that decides which side of a life a person ends up on. "The same ship as Linnea and Avery, the same attack, the same pirates. She was 4. She was hidden in a storage compartment. The pirates didn't find her. The Republic salvage crew did. 3 days later, they thought she was dead. She was not dead. She was very quiet. The Republic put her in the refugee program. She was sent to Meridian 9 because Meridian 9 had foster families with no children. She has been on this colony for 3 years, Tate. She has been on this colony the entire time you have." Tate looked at Marigold. Marigold looked back at him. He could not breathe. He could not. Inez stepped closer. "She was the only one," she said. "From that ship. The only one who lived." The colony was silent. The Drathari guards behind the shuttle were silent. They did not understand what was being said. They understood from the silence that they were not to move. Marigold extended her arms toward him slowly, the way a child reaches when she has been waiting longer than her language can describe. Inez did not pass her over. Inez waited. Tate looked at the child. He looked at her brown hair. He looked at her yellow ribbon. He looked at her eyes that knew too much. She was not Avery. She would never be Avery. But Avery had been on a ship with this little girl. Avery had been on the same ship. Avery had been 4 feet from her, possibly in the same corridor. And Avery had not survived. And this child had. And this child had been carried by something he did not have a name for across 3 years and 1 colony to this exact corridor, to this exact afternoon. To him. He reached out. His hands were shaking very badly now. Inez passed her over. Marigold settled against him, the way a child settles when she has been waiting for the right pair of arms her entire small life. She put her small head against his chest. She put her stuffed rabbit between her stomach and his vest. She did not cry. Marigold never cried. She just breathed. She just breathed against his chest. Tate Brannigan, who had not held a child in 3 years, held her. He held her. He held her so carefully that his arms began to ache from the careful. He did not say anything. He could not. The whole colony watched. Riva had her hand over her mouth. Inez had tears on her face, but she was smiling. Soren was crying openly, which Tate had not seen Soren do even when he was 12, and broke his arm on the utility stairs. Iyari Nassari stood at the bottom of the shuttle ramp. Iyari Nassari, who had written history for 3 years in a tablet no one was allowed to read, took out the other tablet, the secret one, the one she had been waiting for. She began to write. She wrote, "On this day, at this hour, in a courtyard of a colony at the edge of human space, a small girl was returned to a father who was not her father by blood, who was not her father by law, but who was her father by something older than blood and older than law. The universe had carried her 3 years across the dark until it could put her down where she belonged." She paused. She wrote, and Iyari Nassari, scribe of the third rank, witnessed it. She closed the tablet. She did not put it away. She held it against her chest. The colony was quiet for a long, long time. Then Riva said very softly, "It's getting dark. We should get inside. The bunker has heat. I have soup. I always have soup." Tate looked up. He could not speak, but he nodded. 200 people, the small army of an alien empire, and one human carrying a child, began to move together toward the place where the bunker doors stood open. The story was not over, but the worst of it was. And the next part, whatever it was, would not be navigated alone. 6 months passed. 6 months is not a long time in the life of a colony or an empire or a man. It was long enough. The Drathari fleet had withdrawn. Permanently, as promised. The Empress had signed at a ceremony in a hangar bay 6 weeks after the events at Meridian 9, a document she had named the Veshan Accord. It was a treaty between the Drathari Imperium and the Earth Republic. It established permanent non-aggression. It established trade. It established a small diplomatic exchange, which she had insisted very specifically be staffed by people who were not career diplomats. She wanted, she said in her opening remarks, people who had lived enough to know what mattered. The treaty was named for her son. She announced his existence to the empire in the same speech. There had been calls in some of the older noble houses for her abdication. She had ignored them. She had also ignored the resignation of 3 court ministers who had been collecting kickbacks for 40 years. She had not ignored their corruption. She had simply waited for them to finish their resignation speeches before having them arrested. She had become, the Drathari court would say in private, a different woman. Captain Vel Marash was now the Empress's chief military advisor. General Korvath was in a cell. He was permitted books. He read a great deal. He had asked for and received a small carved bird. The Empress had not visited him. She had written him one letter. He kept the letter in the book he was reading. He was reading a Drathari history of the Valerith conquest. The history had been written recently by a scribe of the third rank. The history was honest in a way the court had not approved. Iyari Nassari had been promoted to scribe of the first rank. She had then declined the promotion. She had requested instead a posting at the Earth Drathari Liaison Office on a small planet called Meridian 9. The Empress had granted it. Iyari had been on the colony for 5 months now. She had a small office near the central plaza. She had learned to operate the coffee maker. She had not yet learned to like coffee. She kept trying. Riva Solen had retired as administrator. She had handed the colony over to Inez. Riva now spent her days helping in the orphanage. The orphanage was new. The colony had built it after the attack. It was full of children who had been displaced by various wars in various sectors, none of them Drathari wars anymore. Riva read to the children every evening. She read to them out of a book she had been reading to Marigold for months. The book was about a girl who lived in a yellow house with a garden. Marigold liked the book very much. Tate Brannigan had not gone back to the Republic. He had not been asked to. The Republic had 6 weeks after the attack sent a quiet delegation to Meridian 9. The delegation had wanted to debrief him. The delegation had wanted to interview him. The delegation had wanted to know very specifically why the Drathari Empress had named a treaty for her dead son and signed it at the home of a single Republic citizen. Tate had spoken to the delegation for 10 minutes. He had told them politely that he was a security officer at a mining colony. He had told them politely that he had no further information to offer. He had told them politely that they could leave. They had left. Tate now lived in a small house on the western edge of the colony. The house had been built by the Halpern family before the mine collapse. The house had 2 bedrooms. He shared one of them. The other belonged to a small girl with brown hair and a yellow ribbon. The adoption paperwork had taken 8 weeks. Inez had helped. Riva had helped. Iari had helped surprisingly by providing testimony from the Drathari archives that confirmed beyond any possible legal challenge that Marigold had no living relatives in either human or Drathari space. The paperwork was now in a frame on the kitchen wall. It was the first thing Tate had ever framed. In the evenings on the porch of the small house, Tate sat in a chair that had also belonged to the Halperns. Marigold sat in a smaller chair beside him. They watched the sun go down over the eastern ridge. Marigold drank a small cup of warm milk. Tate drank coffee. He had begun after 20 years to drink it without sugar. He did not know why. It just felt like the kind of thing a man should do. Sometimes Iari came up the path. She did not knock. The colony was small enough that knocking was unnecessary. She would come up the steps and sit on the 3rd chair which Tate had built specifically for her, with extra width to accommodate her forearms. She would sit. She would not bring coffee. She had given up. She would sit, and Tate would sit, and Marigold would sit, and the 3 of them would watch the sun go down. She and Tate did not speak about themselves. They did not need to. Yet. Or maybe ever. Or maybe in a year. Or maybe in 5. There was no hurry. A scribe and a security officer and a small girl with a yellow ribbon were not in a hurry about anything anymore. One evening in the 6th month after the attack, Marigold tugged at Tate's sleeve. Dad, she had begun 3 months ago to call him that. He had not asked her to. She had simply one morning at breakfast looked at him over a bowl of cereal and used the word. He had not been able to eat his eggs that day. He had hidden in the bathroom for 9 minutes. Iari had heard. Iari had not said anything. Iari was very good at not saying anything. Yes, sweetheart. Can we name a star? Name a star. Iari says you can name stars. She says the Drathari name stars after people they love. He looked at Iari. Iari looked at the sunset. She was very interested suddenly in the sunset. Did Iari tell you that? She did. Iari has been busy with you. She has. He looked at the sky. He looked at the first stars coming out. He thought about a woman who had taught 7th grade and a little girl who had loved coffee tables more than was reasonable. He thought about the small girl in his lap and the woman beside him on the porch who had 4 hands and had used 3 of them that afternoon to braid his daughter's hair. He nodded. All right, he said. Let's name some stars. He pointed at the first one. That one, he said, is Linnea. Marigold nodded solemnly, the way only a small girl nods. That one, he said, pointing at the next, is Avery. She nodded again. That one, he said, pointing at the 3rd, is Veshin. Iari beside him made a sound, very small. She covered it with her hand. That one, Marigold said suddenly, is Mommy. She did not mean Linnea. She meant a woman she had not seen in 3 years and a half. Tate nodded. Yes, he said. That one is Mommy. And that one is Daddy. Yes. And... She paused. She looked up at the sky for a long time. Then she pointed at one more star. And that one, she said, is for us. Tate did not speak. He could not. He nodded. Marigold tugged his sleeve again. Dad, can I write a letter to the Empress? Tonight. Tonight. What do you want to say? That she's nice, that Iari has a hard job. I want to draw her a marigold. He nodded. Ayari beside him smiled. She would carry the letter herself in the morning to the diplomatic pouch that left every Tuesday. Iari reached across with her smallest hand and rested it gently on the back of Tate's hand on the porch arm. She did not look at him. She kept looking at the stars. He turned his hand over, slowly. He let his fingers thread just barely into hers. They watched the sky. The sky was full of named things now. Far away in a private chamber on a flagship, drifting in the cold of a remote system, an empress reading a child's letter laughed for the first time in 300 years. End of part 3. End of story.